Today's episode of the GoldCast is unofficially sponsored, or I should say I am promoting dunkoncancer.com. I think last episode I said dunkoncancer.org. I think you could still find it pretty easy, but it's dunkoncancer.com. For every dunk that is being made, I'm donating $1 to cancer research. This is being put on by Kevon O'Connor, whose father was recently diagnosed with cancer, and he decided to turn this into a positive. Kevon O'Connor is one of the best NBA analysts in the game, works for TheRinger.com, and so I am supporting and pledging $1 for every dunk that happens. So the more games that happen, the more money that we give. And before game 3, there was approximately 14 dunks that had happened. So I don't know what the count is after game 3, but I am doing this. Go check out dunkoncancer.com. All right. We have a killer guest today. Candlestick Will, known by his real name, Michael Saltzman, comes onto the show. He's fantastic. The analysis he's going to give is great. You guys are actually going to love him. We start with just a discussion of how we met. We talk about the Giants. We get into a brief discussion about the Giants, where they are, where they're going to go. And then we get into a great discussion about the overall just dynasty that San Francisco has been experiencing. We pump this in your guys' heads all the time. It's great to talk about it with another guest. And then we go into a deep, deep dive over this Warriors NBA Finals run. We talk about everything leading up, the Warriors leading up to this moment and where they are now. This conversation is awesome. I'm very excited. Can't wait for you guys to hear him. And before you do that, remember, you can find the GoldCast on iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, all places where great podcasts are sold for free. You can subscribe, follow us at the _GoldCast on Twitter. On youtube.com/thegoldcast and facebook.com/thegoldcast. All right. We've got a ton of reader comments that are starting to come in. I know I will get to those on Sunday. I'll get to those on Sunday. We'll reach out, and because a lot of people have been responding to us, especially because YouTube is kind of the place to go for those comments. So I appreciate it. Subscribe. If you're on iTunes, give us 5 stars. 5 little stars. Give us 10 stars, even though they don't allow it. Give us 10 for the 5. Helps the algorithm, keeps us at the top. Now, we're here. There's a lot to talk about. Warriors, Giants, even a little bit of 49ers. We managed to squeeze a little bit in right at the end. But before we get started, of course, your professor of fanalism is here. Class is in session. Let's go.
San Francisco, are you ready?
This is the GoldCast.
All right, folks, as promised, my special guest for today is a gentleman by the name of Michael Saltzman, a.k.a. Candlestick Will. So I have to tell you guys this story because this is a great story. So Candlestick Will, a.k.a. Michael Saltzman, and I met on Twitter when David Carr put out that ridiculous post about saying that Joe, which to me was total clickbait, which we talked about a couple weeks ago on the GoldCast, that Joe Montana wasn't even a top 10 quarterback. And I remember you posted a list. It was like a list on Twitter about top 10 quarterbacks, and you had David Carr. It was like ... David Carr. I think it was like in the 400s.
Well, I kept it pretty simple. I had Joe Montana 1, Tom Brady 2, because those two clearly are the standard, especially in the Super Bowl era. And then I just skipped all the way down, put his brother, somewhere in the 400s. And then I think I put him somewhere in 9,000. It wasn't that bad, but it was pretty bad.
And well deserved.
And just with the idea that it's like, okay, you two are nowhere near the area code of some of the legends. So I've never have a problem with a guy who's, didn't have a great career having opinions about the game. But when you say that Joe Montana is not top 10, it definitely makes it easy to kind of pick apart the opinion.
100%. And I remember I linked to that. So I linked to it. And because I had seen a bunch of stuff on it, but I saw your post and I thought your post was hilarious. And I was like, all right, I'm going to retweet this and then let everyone know I'm going to talk about this on the GoldCast. And then you reached out and you were like, hey, are you going to put me on the show or what? And I was like, this is great. Absolutely. Let's get you on the show. And then going through all of your stuff, it was awesome because I saw that you were a staff editor for China Basin Chatter. You've obviously done a lot of writing for the Giants. And so just give me a little bit of the history. Tell a lot of fans for the GoldCast. So, GoldCast, we focus on 49ers, Warriors, Giants all year round. That's what we talk about. And obviously the Warriors are getting the most love right now. 49ers generally, this originally started as a 49er podcast. They get a lot of love. Giants don't get as much love as I want them to. Obviously, as you know, the baseball is very polarizing in 2019 as far as where it is. Tell me how you got into writing for the San Francisco Giants and what that's all about. And, you've kind of written for a couple different places. I've seen Fansided as well. And just kind of let the fans know where you come from in that perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I went to school for writing. I ended up getting a degree at San Jose State in broadcast journalism, and sports writing was kind of where I was planning on going when I was in school. And 20 years later, I'm doing different blogs in different places for the Giants, and so I ended up becoming a teacher. So that's my day job, and ended up finding that teaching about writing ended up being more fulfilling. But my true love and passion is sports. I've, grown up, real quickly. It was like when you're a kid, you want to be a pro athlete. I was going to be the first 3-sport athlete, baseball, football, basketball, because when you grow up in the era of Bo Jackson and Deion Sanders and Brian Jordan and Charlie Ward and all these guys, it's like, oh, 2 sports at once, no problem. That's easy, And so when you're 7, 8 years old, you're like, that's exactly what I'm going to do. What's up? I can't pick one sport. I got to pick 2. And, in my case, it was like, why not pick all 3? And so, yeah, so I grew up, Bay Area kid from San Jose. So, these were all my teams too. And, Giants and Warriors, especially. And so, once I kind of jumped onto Twitter, back in 2012, my original reason for, throwing out a Twitter handle like Candlestick Will and getting on Twitter was just to kind of follow what was going on with the Giants. They were right in the middle of what turned out to be a second title run. And Twitter had, by that time, clearly become where you get the latest news, where beat writers were putting out information, first, going on a website and trying to find articles. It was like, that was hours later. Like if you wanted to know what happened the same inning something happened, there'd be information on Twitter. So I jumped on Twitter, got on there, and just started friending baseball fans, Giants fans, different things, and started writing for Baseball Essential not that long after that, maybe only a year or 2 later, and started doing just Giant stuff, and it was great, and had an opportunity to write there for a while, and then a guy reached out to me and told me about Around the Foghorn, which was part of Fansided, and same exact setup as far as being able to write just about the Giants, and no pressure to write all the time, but trying to write maybe 1 article a week at most, and so it was always a real nice place to find ways to just kind of get my love for the Giants out there and be a writer, which is something I always wanted to do. And the guy who runs China Basin Chatter has been a friend of mine on Twitter for a long time now, and a few of us from Around the Foghorn had decided we wanted to kind of have our own place, and China Basin Chatter was a website that had been going in the past and had kind of fallen dormant because they hadn't been writing as many articles anymore, and so they wanted to kind of start it back up, and so it gave us a place to just have our own space and have our own freedom to write about the Giants how we wanted to. And so it's a good core group of guys and girls, and we talk about all Giants levels, minor leagues as well, and have some minor league experts as well as guys who love to talk about the pro team. And yeah, the last 3 years, it hasn't been as fun to write about. I literally wrote an article this last week about how good the 2022 Giants are going to be with these added draft picks and guys like Joey Bart and Heliot Ramos and Marco Luciano and some of these prospects, but that leaves a lot to be desired for the next few years.
Absolutely. And actually, I read that article, and that was a great article. And I think for the Giants fans, I feel like really we're in a position right now where basically we're waiting for Boch's swan song to finish, and all due respect, he deserves to go out exactly the way he wants to. I think he has more than earned that right with the Giants. I'm not even mad. I'm not bothered. I'm not angry. I'm like, Boch deserves to go out the way he does. And then once he's gone, I really want to see what Zarady's going to do, because I feel like the next year is truly the beginning of Zarady's era as president of baseball operations, and I really want to see what he does with this team. And that article you put out about the 2022 team, I think, is really where the Giants fans are. The Giants fans that really keep up with this team and really follow what's going on. I think we're sitting here, we're saying goodbye to Boch, but everyone has an eye towards 2020 and beyond, because this is a team, just given Zarady's track record, he's going to need about 2 or 3 years. But given what he did with the Dodgers, if he can replicate that success here, you're really looking at a team in the next 2 to 3 years that is going to be once again dominating the NL West. What do you think about that?
Well, I agree. I mean, you look at, the things that he did that I think are, the most well known as far as, what Giants fans were kind of hoping for this year was the guys like the Chris Taylors and the Max Muncies, and, trying to find those diamonds in the rough. And maybe we've found a couple in, a Tyler Austin or a Trevor Gott. Maybe we found, a couple of pieces that might last beyond this year. Getting a guy like Kevin Pillar doesn't necessarily fit the mold of what they were looking for, but I also think there's some internal pressure outside of Farhan to, bring guys in that can help them do better, today. But at the same time, Pillar's contract doesn't, ends next year. So, they're not looking to make any long-term commitments. Derek Holland's contract ends at the end of the year. Most of the veteran players they brought in were either minor league deals or 1-year deals. And so there's no added inflexibility. One of the reasons I wrote the piece as the 2022 Giants is because all the veterans on this team go through 2021 for the most part, with Longoria is the only contract that's guaranteed through 2022, and Posey has an option to 2022. So by then I can't imagine that Posey or Longoria are still Giants. And even if they are, Posey's, not the same, not going to be asked to do the same things he's doing now. So, by then Crawford will be somewhere else. If he's still playing, Belt same thing. And so it'll be a huge transition, and, we can have conversations about, should they extend Will Smith? Should they extend Bumgarner? Should they trade them both? Should they trade them both and then try to bring them both back? All those different combinations. But when you're just looking at what they have in the system, it's going to take a few years before those players become, a huge part of their core. Joey Bart could be up as soon as September. The way Heliot Ramos is hitting in San Jose, maybe he's only, in the minors for another year or so. As young as he is, right now, we've seen that with guys, like in Atlanta with Acuna and Soto and in Washington, that teams are realizing that the sooner you bring a guy up when they've shown they can play, the cheaper it is to play them during their prime years. You're not losing at bats and innings to guys, in the minors when they could be producing in the major league level.
Yeah, it is. It is very interesting, and I love that. I love that article. Definitely, you guys go check it out. If you go to @Candlestick Will, he's friends of mine on Twitter. You can go right over there and you could see it. You could find links to China Basin Chatter, and you could see the article he's talking about, especially all of our diehard Giants fan. Go check that out, because it gives you some excitement for what's happening in the future. And it just kind of reiterates what we talked about on the GoldCast previously, that the Giants, as currently constructed, you really just kind of have to hold through this year and next year and the year after is when they start beginning the real big rebuild. So, it's just one more year, and I'm actually fine. Like I've said, I'm fine with them being where they're at. I don't mind. Let Bochy leave on his terms. The man brought us a dynasty. He broke a 50-year streak of no World Series. That run from 2010 to 2014 was so epic. There was every single year that those guys were there. Everybody counted us out. No one said the Giants were going to make it. They come in from the wild card from 2014 to go all the way to Game 7 against Kansas City. Basically, Bochy and the way Bochy structured that postseason with Bumgarner, using him as your core, that is essentially the blueprint for how the Cubs won it 2 years later. So really, you really can't say enough about Bochy and what he did. I mean, his style of managing in the post influenced and changed the game for the rest of this decade.
If we were having this conversation in 2009, talking about, hey, hopefully by 2012 will be good, it's like it'd be a different conversation. I think once we won a championship, for me especially, it was like I had always been saying I want one championship in my lifetime, and so to have three, it's mind-boggling. And we don't have to shift to Warriors talk yet, but the idea that I could see my favorite baseball team win 3 championships and then see my favorite basketball team suddenly become the greatest dynasty we've ever seen, because none of us were alive during the Celtics run. It's like, what is happening? How does this world completely 180 from the Warriors that had, traded Tim Hardaway for Bimbo Coles, and the Giants that thought J.R. Phillips was the answer when they traded Will Clark? Like, I mean, it's like to see these teams completely 180 from what they were in our youth. It's incredible, or at least in my youth. I don't know if we're the same age.
We probably are. We probably are. I was born in '80, so I was there for the
okay.
get-go.
So yeah, we're both. I'm 39, so yeah, we're both 1980 kids. So there we go.
Yep, absolutely. I was there through my earliest memory of a championship was it's either 88 or 89, and even my dad can't remember anymore. He can't confirm, but after we won the Super Bowl, my dad piles us into his car. He is a White Regal at the time, White Regal lowrider. We go down the Mission District, and I kid you not, he's wearing the classic vintage gold 49ers jacket, which I own. I own his jacket, and I own like several more. He sticks his hand out of his car, and he's high-fiving the drivers on going the opposite direction down Mission Street. We're going down past 23rd, 22, 21, on our way to downtown. That was my earliest memory of a championship. But I think what you did, that was a great segue. Let's go right into this about the Warriors. I agree. We've been banging this drum on the GoldCast for years now, that what has happened with San Francisco Bay Area sports this decade. The Niners losing 2012 is still the most heartbreaking thing out of everything, all the success. I am still upset and hurt about it. I've only seen that game once. They played it over the weekend. I saw it on a TV. Yeah, and I literally just bolted. I was like, I can't. I'm sorry. I can't.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't remember if I sent out I think I might have sent out a tweet being like, attention Niner fans, just a heads up. Like, it's kind of like a warning. Maybe I didn't actually. We can look back, but I don't know if I sent that tweet or not. But I was doing it kind of as a warning, as like, I'm not sure if the Niner fans out there can handle it.
Yeah,
but
no.
Just like, maybe don't turn to 212.
Yeah, exactly. But this run, back-to-back dynasties, I always talk about the 49ers run from 81 to 95, epic 15-year run, basically the precursor to what we're seeing with the Patriots now. This was the precursor to it. The only difference, what I find more impressive about the 49ers run is that the 49ers, we did it with 2 different head coaches, 2 different starting quarterbacks. The primary core of quarterback and coach changed, and we still maintain that success. And Steve Young, we always talk about this on the GoldCast, the perfect stat. The perfect stat is Joe Montana, 4 Super Bowl rings, 3 MVPs, 11 touchdown passes, 0 interceptions. A perfect stat. Literally, he is flawless. I don't know if we'll ever see that get broken, and if we do, I hope it's someone in a red and gold uniform. But Steve Young continues the trend of the perfect stat. He is flawless in his Super Bowl win. I just never thought we'd see a run like that again. And to get it with the other 2 teams, and as you said, Giants were always kind of, always the bridesmaid, never the bride. Warriors were competitive, but no one ever really thought the Warriors were actually going to win a series. And for both these teams, you got the Giants breaking the 50-year streak, Warriors breaking the 40-year streak. Back to back, we have won more championships in this 10-year era in the Big Three than the Boston has, which no one ever talks about, and that drives me nuts. But what do you think about this overall success? Because it's like you said, it's mind-boggling what they've done.
Well, I mean, and if we're the same age, then we saw just the hideousness of the Chris Cohan era with the
Yes.
Warriors, and just how many bad decisions, and whether it was not risking taking someone like Kevin Garnett out of high school, which would have been a huge out of nowhere risk to take Joe Smith, or choosing not to go after Kobe Bryant, even though he wanted to go to the Lakers. It's like, well, draft Kobe Bryant and trade for Vlade Divac. It's like, have some foresight into like, well, still go get the best player and then have a great asset, and then who knows, maybe he does come to you anyway. Although if I was Kobe, I wouldn't have wanted to go anywhere near the Warriors. But all the trades, I mentioned the giving up Tim Hardaway because he tore an ACL, with the idea that like you can't recover from a ACL. Like, come on, Warriors organization. We were begging for Larry Ellison to buy the team, and then we get some guy named Joe Lacob who we don't know who it is, and then hilariously he trades Monte Ellis like right afterwards, which was the right move. And I was one of the few Warrior fans was like, why do you care about Monte Ellis this much when Andrew Bogut's clearly a better fit for a championship team, and Monte Ellis is a sixth man who's been asked to be a starter. Like, I spent 30 years watching the Warriors have a bunch of six men start, and Monte Ellis was one of the best of those six men, but he was not as good as he is. He was always better being able to come off the bench and just be a scorer the way Lou Williams and Jamal Crawford were, and just because he was never a great defender, and he was always quick, but he couldn't stay with guys for 40 minutes. But you put him out there, and he can score 20 a night off the bench. That's pretty elite for that kind of spot. And it was just seeing the way that things were mismanaged then all of a sudden you go out and you get Jerry West, and it just totally changed everything. Suddenly it was like, okay, now this owner's putting his money where his mouth is. He's going out and getting the best people, the smartest people, and it's still hard to put into words like how that all happened, because I told a story. I don't know if I shared it on Twitter or not, but I was telling it the other day that when Steph Curry, I guess it might have been his rookie year, I was still a season ticket holder at the time, and my season ticket rep was like, hey, we want to give you an autographed jersey of a player for being such a loyal season ticket holder. And so we have two choices. We have Andres Biedrins or Steph Curry. And Steph Curry's was having ankle injuries and was already being rumored to be traded to the Suns for Stoudemire on draft day. And they were talking about, maybe he's going to get traded. And Andres Biedrins had a long-term contract. So guess which jersey I own?
Uh-oh.
You know what I mean? So I could have a rookie Steph Curry autographed jersey in my possession. Instead I own an Andres Biedrins. And the reason and the reason is 100% of the reason is the scar tissue the Warriors have given me for 20 years. Like, that was post
Totally not your fault. Totally not your fault.
That was post We Believe. That was post, and we had that team for 16 games in a playoff run. We immediately trade Jason Richardson. I mean, the amount of guys that should have stayed Warriors longer, and amount of guys who were Warriors, for way too quick and all. I mean, it was so much bad management throughout that when it came to that decision, I was like, Curry's not even going to be a Warrior in a couple of years. You look at someone like Gilbert Arenas, who was a nice player for the Warriors, was coming into his own. And then as soon as he became he could have become a free agent, he immediately bolts for another team, and the Warriors don't match. And it's like, so what chance is Curry going to be no one at that time thought Curry would be what he was. But even if Curry stayed with the Warriors, it was only going to be for a couple of years before they traded him. Like, that was just what you thought. And so I'm sitting there going, well, at least Biedrins has a long-term deal. I guess he'll be around for a while. So I got the jersey of the guy I thought would be there longer. Yeah. And, so to think that from that point, it's like now that I admit that, the idea that I would have thought that Steph Curry would become who he became would not only stop getting brutal ankle injuries, but then become basically one of the, most revolutionary figures in all of sports. It's like, I still can't process that. I'm having a hard time even, saying words right now, trying to put, context into what this has become. And then to hit home runs on Klay Thompson, to hit home runs on Draymond Green when he was the third guy you drafted. Clearly the Warriors didn't know what they had in Draymond, or they would have drafted him with the 7th pick. And, so you look at all those guys, and then those three in particular, all three of them have been given a ton of money from the Warriors. And most guys, when they get that kind of a contract, they completely stop. They shut it down. They're like, now I can just coast. And it's not because those players are bad players, but it's like, usually once you get paid, it's like, okay, now I can relax now. If I have an injury, I'm going to take my time with it, and these guys are hungrier than ever to, win another championship. And most teams are lucky to have one guy like that. The Warriors have three like that. And then, having a guy like Andre Iguodala, that signing was bigger than Durant. That's how big that was, because nobody ever came to the Warriors. And Iguodala looked at what Silicon Valley could bring to him off the court, saw what they had in Klay and Steph, and said, I can help it. I can help here. I can help bring a championship here. And the idea that any player of any talent actually thought they could help the Warriors win, I mean, that had never happened before. We're signing guys like Derek Fisher for $35 million, in free agency. I mean, we couldn't get a decent player to come to the Warriors. And so, as big as Durant, I mean, Durant's the biggest free agent signing in sports history, maybe, but Iguodala was bigger for what it meant to start this whole journey and build this into a winner. And so the idea that the Warriors are still, 3 games away from another championship is just incredible.
It is incredible. And to think that even when he got here, he was told that, they're going to need him off the bench, which was insane when Kerr came here. And he did it and proved to be so, as you said, so instrumental to these runs because of that sacrifice and because of the selflessness. He could have, in a sport where diva is king, he did the opposite, and it's incredible. Now let's get into this now, since we're here. Game 3, we both said off air that had we recorded this last night, there would have been just F-bombs left and right. I'm still so pissed off about it. And it's not the Warriors' fault. It's nobody's fault. It's not the Warriors. It's just injury laden. You can't even be angry at the Warriors, although I do feel there was another gear for this team. But, I always talk on the GoldCast. Michael, why don't you give everyone your opinion on this? What did you see? How frustrated with you? What was your journey through a frustrating Game 3 last night?
Well, the first thing that I'll mention before I do any kind of ranting and raving of any kind or of any version is, when you give up 17 threes and you have 14 turnovers, there's not much more you need to say as to why you lost.
Yes.
Most of those 17 threes were wide open. Like the idea that Danny Green could go 6 for 8 from 3 suggests that even when he had already made 3 or 4, we're still leaving him wide open. I mean, that's just irresponsible. No matter, that we saw that in game 1 a little bit with Siakam. It's like once he establishes himself in the first half as having a hot hand, then you don't let him get comfortable ever again. And, Ron Adams is a genius, and they're amazing at making adjustments in game to handle things like that. And I thought that was the one thing that they were really poor at was, locking down defensively on keeping guys like Danny Green and Kyle Lowry from getting open looks at the end of games or at the end of that game. Because, Kyle Lowry gets an open look in games 1 or 2, you're fine with it because he wasn't doing well. In game 3, his shot was falling. So he was shooting with confidence. He was looking for his shot in the second half. Why are you giving him opportunities to shoot in rhythm? And so that to me is the number one reason. We could waste some time on here talking about how abhorrent it is that Mark Davis was a lead referee in a finals game because he's an obscenely horrible referee.
How bad were those calls, though? For 1 second, they were on both ends of the ball.
There were some really terrible calls, but the Warriors have played for 5 years now with all these same referees. It's not like this isn't Mark Davis's first finals with the Warriors. Scott Foster and Ed Malloy and all these guys that we've learned their names. Usually a good referee crew is 3 that you don't even know who they are. So the fact that we know their names, obviously, the fact that we know who Tony Brothers is just means that he's probably made some bad calls. But, they made bad calls in these first 3 games against the Warriors and for the Warriors. There was calls that, obviously Steph Curry carried on that 1-3. But obviously Kawhi Leonard traveled too. So, usually things even out. The fact that they missed like 3 goaltends is pretty pathetic. That three referees could all miss it multiple times. But, all that being said, you have to get out of your own way and say, you know what, I can't control a bad call, but I can control how I react to it. I think I don't want to rip the guy, but, after a really good game 2, DeMarcus Cousins had a really bad game 3. And part of the reason he had a bad game 3 was every time he went to the hole, there was contact. Every time they didn't call a foul, he got frustrated, and it hurt him going back to play defense, and it hurt the team. And had he gotten out of his own way and just played and then talked to the referee during a timeout, then maybe they play better defensively and maybe they do better and maybe he handles the next possession better. But it seemed like he was doing a lot of sulking on the court. And that's, I think, part of the reason why Bogut played so many minutes was I think Kerr was like, look, if you're not going to be engaged out there when there's a mistake, then we can't play you. And, he did get fouled a few times and they didn't call it. But, yes, they missed the goaltend that was a clear goaltend. But you have to get over it. Draymond is one of the worst examples sometimes at, overreacting to referees and those kind of things. But Draymond has also done a lot better since that conversation he had about, trying to be better for his son and watching his son flop and realizing that he was having a bad influence on him. And he's been much less of himself the last few games, especially in these finals, where even if he gets mad at a referee, he doesn't go after the referee the way he used to and get technicals, because that hurts your team. And so I think that's something that DeMarcus needs to realize, is that, look, no matter what mistakes they might make, we make mistakes too. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to, throw a bad pass. You're going to, have a turnover here and there. The refs are going to make mistakes too. So you have to get out of that mindset that they're out to get you, or that, oh, I can't believe you made that call. Just play. And the Warriors have done a better job than every other team in the last 5 years at getting over that and just playing. While James Harden and Chris Paul complain to the refs on every possession, the Warriors take the lead. And, we beat the Rockets every year because of that. Because ultimately, we do a better job, even when, Draymond's at his worst. We still do a collective better job at, just playing and just looking for open shots and just playing defense. And, right now the Raptors are playing better, and the Raptors have played better than we have in the first 3 games.
So let's talk about that. So in the first half, I agree with you. The defense was sorely lacking. You're seeing and especially in the first half, you're seeing the Raptors just get in the paint with ease. A couple wide open threes, but they're just rolling into the paint. And then in the second half, okay, so the Warriors start doing a better job of defending the paint, but now you've got the Raptors just dropping threes with ease, and it just seemed to be an overall mismatch on defense. But don't you think a little bit of that has to fall on the shoulders of the fact that we don't have Klay Thompson, who's one of the best two-way players in the game?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you look at the versatility they had in game 2 to be able to play Klay Thompson and Andre Iguodala and even Livingston, who's, Livingston's not the defender he used to be, but he's okay. But when Livingston suddenly becomes your second best defender on the perimeter, instead of your third or fourth, that changes a lot of things. Draymond's at his best when he can be more of a center fielder and, free safety type, and be able to just kind of roam and help with all 5 guys on the floor. And when he has to be completely locked in on a guy, it means that there's no extra help for anyone else. And so it really does change the way our defense is. So when Andre Iguodala is trying to lock up one guy, whoever that is, and Draymond's got to be on somebody else, those other 3 guys then are way more exposed than they normally are. And, last night, a lot of times it was guys like Bogut and guys like Quinn Cook and Alfonso McKinney. And, those are nice players, but when they're all on the floor at the same time, that really does change the dynamic. And, if Klay can go in game 4, that changes a lot of things, but mostly it changes things defensively, because, as good as he is offensively, he's always been underrated defensively. And, just proof by the fact that he still never won a first team defense, in all NBA defense. And even this year just finally got on an all defensive team for the first time in his career. And he's outside of Kawhi Leonard. He's the best two-way player in the game.
100%, no question. So you actually dropped some news on me before we started that we haven't talked about on the GoldCast. Talk about Kevon Looney.
Well, it was reported by ESPN, so it seems like anytime that Adrian Wojnarowski says something, it's about as close to fact as it can get. But he had just shared out that the Warriors have reevaluated Kevon Looney's shoulder again, and that he might return for the finals. Now, I don't know if that means return maybe for Game 7 with a 10% chance, or if that means, maybe he can play through the pain in Game 4. I don't know where that scale is, but the way the report went that they were going to, evaluate him again, but after another evaluation, it looks like now he's not completely out for the finals. Now it's a chance maybe he could return. Maybe that's because they saw some optimism with him waking up this morning and feeling like he felt better. Maybe it was because Andrew Bogut played 21 minutes and DeMarcus Cousins didn't have a great game, and suddenly they went to Kevon and said, "Are you sure your shoulder's all right? Not. Are you sure you can't handle the pain? Or whatever." So I don't know some of the inner workings, obviously, but if Wojnarowski says it, it's about as close to fact as you can get from reporting. So, the way I look at it is that, the same reason, even the fact that DeMarcus Cousins is playing is pretty crazy considering the injury he had, back in April. So, one thing we've learned from the Warriors is they're not very good at letting us know about injuries, because we were under the impression that Kevin Durant was definitely going to play before he actually has played, and he still hasn't played. I would think that the most likely to play Game 4 is Klay, and it's possible maybe Durant plays. I would think Durant maybe wouldn't be back until Game 5, just because it's only 2 more days, between Games 3 and 4. So I would think that they would, maybe wait until Game 5 for Durant, and then Kevon. I don't have any optimism, because if he really did mess up his shoulder, I can't imagine he'd be able to play with that. But then at the same time, it's like, okay, but as a big, it's not like you have to. You're never shooting. Kevon Looney never shoots. So then it's just, all right, can you handle the banging inside? And I don't think he would be able to. But if he's got any kind of pain threshold like Klay Thompson, then maybe he could. I don't know.
For me,
or go ahead.
So for me, the thing that makes me most concerned is that if it's his collarbone, how does he raise his arms up to defend?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I just don't know. I mean, the idea that he could play on it seems pretty crazy. It's not a small thing that Klay Thompson, Kevin Durant, Kevon Looney are all free agents. And so there's a lot of uncertainty about next year for them, even if it's, pretty well established that no matter what happens these next few games, Durant will probably get his max money and Klay Thompson will probably get his max money. But Kevon Looney has never made big money in the NBA. From NBA, he's made a few $1 million, so he's made a lot of money. But in NBA money, that's not very much. And he is coming off playing for a team who's won multiple championships, and he was a big piece of that. So in the offseason, he has a chance to make a ton of money. And, whether it's from the Warriors, deciding to keep him, or whether some other team decides to offer him starter money. And so there's a huge risk there if he plays injured and then ends up hurting his shoulder worse. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I don't know the inner workings of shoulders. I've always gotten the impression that if you injure bone, that somehow that's an easier thing to heal and fix, whereas muscles and everything else can be a lot more complicated. So if it's just a bone, then maybe, even hurting it worse or just fighting through the pain won't hurt him long term. I don't know. I haven't heard anyone say that, what that injury would be like if he were to re-injure it or injure it worse. But I got to imagine that it's for his career, it would make sense for him not to not to do anything that would create long-term damage. If he can't create long-term damage and it's just a pain threshold thing, then then it's up to him. And I can tell from the way he's played the last couple of years that he seems to only care about winning, like most Warriors. But that's also because he's been part of such a winning culture. So you take him from that, maybe that changes, and so maybe the money matters more than we realize. I don't know. Not suggesting that if he doesn't play somehow it's only because of money, but just the idea that like he has a lot on his plate to try to make the best decision for him. And as a fan, I'd love for him to find a way to play because he's a huge part of what they do.
Absolutely. Agreed 100%. All right. I'm going to fire off some questions for you. I want to hear what you think. Let's go through a little quick roundtable. Does Kevin Durant play again in this NBA Finals? Number one. Yes. Okay.
I'll predict game 5.
Game 5. Okay. That's the first one. Second one. Is Kevin Durant still in a Warriors uniform come next October?
Absolutely. Yes. Maybe. Possibly. I don't know.
Yeah, I think you sound like everyone. I really think this idea that the Warriors are not going to sign him to a max contract for $300 million for the next 5 or 6 years, that the Warriors aren't going to drop that on the table, I think is ludicrous. I think 100% they do. And I think the real caveat is whether or not Kevin Durant wants to do it. But I feel like as we've gotten deeper into this postseason, the idea that he is just going to be up and gone has definitely withered. It's not as strong. And honestly, it feels like most of the time it's coming from beat writers more than anybody else.
I think it's coming from 365 days straight of having to cover it. And you don't want to say the same thing for 12 months. So you come up with other versions of the same story. This is the weirdest offseason I've ever seen from an NBA standpoint, as far as any kind of like, we tend to feel like Klay is definitely coming back and Kawhi is definitely going to the Clippers. Like those were the two kind of the free agents. Those are the two that people would have put the most confidence in. But it's like, who knows what Kyrie's going to do? Who knows what Kevin Durant's going to do? And to be honest, who knows what Kawhi's going to do? Klay seems like the only one of the big group that is probably going to just stay with the Warriors. There's the chances that Lacob doesn't offer him a max contract is probably like less than 1%. To me, because you have any team that has a super max player, they're more than likely going to be over the cap. And as soon as you're over the cap, especially in the Warriors case where they're making a boatload of money and they're just opening the Chase Center, which has already sold like billions of dollars worth of, suites and whatever. So money's not an issue for the Warriors, in these last few years. So going over the cap is kind of irrelevant, like how much over the cap you go. So when people say, oh, Draymond Green's not a max player, well, that doesn't mean you don't give him a max allowable contract, because would it really make sense to tell a player who you think is a core player, we're going to lowball you because we don't think your market value is worth max money? Like, why not overpay and just say, look, we're going to give you every penny we're allowed to give you because that's how much we believe in you, whether you think it's the smartest financial move or not. Because what's an extra few $1 million when you're already over the cap? Like, it's not like if you give Draymond Green or Klay Thompson $3 million less a year that you'd be able to get more in free agency, because you wouldn't. You're still over the cap. So you're only going to be able to get guys from mid-level exceptions and draft players anyway, or make trades. So, my thing is, you offer Durant the max, you offer Klay the max, and then you start talking about extension talks with Draymond and even Iguodala, because as much as he's kind of flirted with the idea that he might retire, I don't think he wants to go anywhere. And if you offer him the same kind of money he's been making, I don't think he leaves.
Yeah. All right. That's great. Another one. Does Klay come back? This NBA Finals.
Oh, in the NBA Finals. I do think he'll come back for Game 4, because I do think he was ready to play Game 3 hurt, and they just wouldn't let him. So I think their compromise was, we'll let you play Game 4 if you sit out Game 3.
Yeah, I agree. Does Klay come back in a Warriors uniform in October?
That's the one. I'm more confident in that happening than about anything else this offseason. That's the one thing I'm probably the most confident in.
I completely 100% agree. I don't know how many more times Klay can say, I want to spend the rest of my life in a Warriors uniform before people believe him. Like, he literally says it every time he's asked it, and still we have beat writers trying to push this idea that Klay could be somewhere else next year when he has repeatedly said the entire year, I want to be in a Warriors uniform for the rest of my career.
Well, and I think he also knows. He said it the other day when he was talking about when they asked him about Steph, and he talked about their relationship. But it's a perfect relationship because he's such a good two-way player, and Steph has become such a revolutionary player. They feed off each other perfectly. Klay doesn't ever have to be the voice of the team. You know, the voice of the team is Steph. So some of the things that Klay doesn't like to do, like talk to the media as much and have to, you know, do some of the things that Steph does as literally the brand of the team. You know, he can be that other guy, and he's fine with that. He's fine being less in the spotlight. And then on the floor, he knows how valuable he is to protecting Steph by taking the top perimeter player on defense and by being such a great shooter to create spacing for Steph and vice versa. So because they are paired so perfectly together, which is the other reason why, you know, a shout out to the logo for having the foresight to see that Monte Ellis and Steph weren't a good fit, but that Klay Thompson, who wasn't a good defender in college and just was a shooter, had the makeup and the body type to be a good defender, and that would be a better fit with Steph. I mean, it's the amount of ways that we need to thank Jerry West for what he's done for those Warriors franchises is very, very underrated. But that one's as big as it is, and I think Klay's smart enough to know that any money he can get elsewhere, it's better to just stay with the Warriors and not worry about trying to win on his own the way that people want Durant to.
Yeah, exactly. I agree 100% on that. Okay, last question about the Warriors, and then I want to ask you a couple 49ers questions before we go. Last question. Who wins the series? How many games?
Well, I had said Warriors in 5 before the series started with all these injuries. I'll still say I'll just screw it. I'll say Warriors in 6 because as silly as that sounds, the way they're playing, I do think Klay comes back and they find a way to win at home in Game 4. And once they have that, I do think that would then bring Durant back for Game 5. And so I'm basing this prediction partly on that, but also the way that Steph's playing and the fact that Draymond proved in Game 2 that as soon as they see mistakes, he knows how to kind of fix it defensively. That I do think that they get it that, okay, it's 2-1 now. All the things that have happened, no one cares. It's just us. Now we've got everything against us. So let's just go out and win 3 in a row. And it's a crazy idea to think that they could do that. But yeah, Warriors in 6 seems like exactly what'll happen. So, and what would be nice about Warriors in 6 from a Warrior standpoint is that what a way to end this 5-year run at Oracle with a home game to win it out.
That would be the best, literally the best. Okay, two 49ers questions, and then I'll let you go. This has been a fantastic conversation. I've had a great time with you. So number 1, does Jimmy G play the whole season this year?
I'll say no, but mostly because very few quarterbacks ever play 16 games. So I don't think he has another devastating injury. But I also think that it's become such a brutal sport, and even with all the rules changes to try to help keep quarterbacks healthy, it's really hard to play 16 games. So okay. I'll put if you're asking me to put like an over under, I would say under.
Okay, under 16. All right. So then last 49ers season, what is our final win-loss record for the year?
All right, so let's assume then, based on what I just said, that like Garoppolo plays like 14 games. It seemed like last year, from my timeline alone, that the kid that I forgot his name now, but the kid that backed up ended up backing up Jimmy G, ended up being pretty decent. So I would think that would lead to 8-8, 9-7 as like maybe the baseline, because Jimmy G is such a difference maker compared to other, and we've seen that in over the years, when Aaron Rodgers is out, the Packers are terrible. When Aaron Rodgers comes back, they're a playoff team. So it's incredible the way this sport has changed to where the quarterback just matters that much. So if he plays 14 games, I think they can have a winning record. So I would say, and I haven't been following. Just to be perfectly honest, I haven't been following football the way I used to. I'm basically completely in on, the day Kaepernick stopped playing was the day I stopped watching. So there's a whole nother bag of worms if you wanted to go down that road with me. But between that and the CTE stuff that the NFL tried to hide from the players, I've just kind of tapped out. But I still follow along on Twitter, especially because I have a lot of people online that care deeply about the Niners like you do, and so I do tend to still pay attention. And so if Jimmy G can be healthy, then I could see a winning record. So I would put that at 9-7. But the NFL has become so crazy because injuries happen so much more frequently, it seems. And as soon as someone goes down, it changes the whole complexion of a team. So even with all these young defensive players they've drafted the last few years that seem like they could all kind of mesh together pretty well, how good is their defense? How much depth do they have? It doesn't seem like many Niner fans think too highly of their defensive backfield. So that could really, make a huge difference on how many wins they have. But like I said, quarterback has clearly become the feature position times a million, way before, the era of Montana and Young, was mattered. It was, you still could win with a really good defense and a decent quarterback. I don't think a Jeff Hostetler led Giants or a Trent Dilfer led Ravens can win a Super Bowl anymore. The way the league's changed.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair point. I have them pretty close. You were thinking of Nick Mullins, by the way. It was Nick Mullins was the backup QB you're thinking of. But I'd say I'm putting the 49ers at 8-8. I agree. I would say, let's say we put the over under for games Jimmy G plays at 10. I would say over, but I would say maybe 14. I put him at like 14 games, somewhere between like 12 and 14 total. I could see him definitely being hurt and being out for a couple games. I'm just nervous. He is yet to fulfill the amount of games he was supposed to play, except for that middle his first season with the 49ers when he played the last 5. But the year before he couldn't finish the amount of games he was supposed to play while Brady was out. And then last year, obviously the injury against Kansas City. So I'd put them about 8-8. But I look forward to this. Hey, this was a great talk, Michael. I'm really glad you reached out to me. I'm super glad I got you on the show. You got to come back on as we get closer to the end of the NBA Finals. Let's do this again and wrap up the NBA Finals. What do you say?
Sounds perfect, man. I really appreciate you having me on. It was fun, and I always love talking sports, man. So you can hit me up whenever you want.
Awesome. Thank you. And you can find him on Twitter at Candlestick Will. He is staff editor for the China Basin Chatter. And is there anything else you want to promote, plug, or announce?
No, man. I mean, if you go to my Twitter, it has all the things that I'm doing and all the things that I'm about. I've actually just a little side note. Personally, I've lost over 100 pounds in the last 10 months. I've been trying to get healthy. I was over 320 pounds when I started, and I'm 220 now. So I have a whole separate Twitter account that's at Can't Until. For that journey. So if anyone's motivated or inspired to try to get healthy and lose weight and try and do that kind of thing, you can certainly follow me there. I have an Instagram and a YouTube channel as well that you can all find there. But yeah, I'm just trying to be the best, father and husband and friend I can for me and my family. And so, got out of my own way and started, living a better life. So, I'm pretty proud of myself for what I was able to accomplish so far, and now it's just spending the rest of my life maintaining that.
That's amazing. That is absolutely incredible. As a guy who is very big into health, and I work out all the time. I eat extremely clean. I also have lost weight in the past. I think that is an incredible story. I definitely want to bring you back on so we could talk a little bit more about that. So again, check him out. He is at Candlestick Will on Twitter. Michael Saltzman, thank you so much for being on the show, buddy.
All right. Thanks, Rudy. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. We'll talk soon. All right, folks. That concludes an awesome episode of the GoldCast. Candlestick Will, a writer and huge, as you see, huge sports nut. And that's just the beginning of this journey. I am lining up a lot of super fans from all facets, 49ers, Warriors, and Giants. And I've got some surprises coming up. So keep in tune. Game 4 coming up very soon, this Friday, 6 p.m. Do not miss it. Toronto at Golden State, Game 4. I agree. I'm pretty sure Klay is back for Game 4. And then I think we unleash Kevin Durant for Game 6. Or Game 5, I'm sorry. And then we end this mother. One thing I didn't get to say while he was on, I try to be a little more subdued when other people are on. When I'm alone, you get Rudy unhinged, which is what you love, which is what I love to deliver. But you know what? If the kids are here, you might want to fast forward 15 seconds. Fuck Kyle Lowry. All right? This little choke artist here couldn't, seriously, this little choke artist disappears in big game after big game, have to have Kawhi Leonard sit here and save his ass every single time. And yesterday, oh, now you're the man. Now you're the man where half the Warriors are down. Oh, now you're the man? Yeah, fuck Kyle Lowry. I just had to get that out of my system. Had to get that out. All right. Anyways, you guys can find me on Twitter at Rudy Solis 3RD, Instagram at Rudy Solis 3. So concludes another edition of the GoldCast. We are the voice of the Bay. I'm your host, Rudy Solis III, and we'll see you next time. Same GoldCast time, same GoldCast channel. They have angered a walking giant. Warriors, here we go. Game 4. Let's go!
This is the GoldCast.